Welcome to Truck You Podcast. My name is Sebastian. This podcast is all about trucking. We love diesel engines, semi-trucks, being on the road, and freedom. So let's go. All right, welcome to Truck You Podcast. My name is Sebastian. My special guest today is Chris Jolly, the freight coach. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man? Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for coming.
Dude, absolutely. I'm in Chicago.
I know. What are you doing here, man?
I'm actually at the JOC, the Journal of Commerce has their inland distribution conference going on downtown, and they invited me to come out and do my live show from their event. And yeah, man, it's just wild now being 2.5 years into this whole content creation thing about what this can all grow into. And I know we talked about that when you were on my podcast as well, man, about just that consistency, and like the most important piece about business and really everything is just not fucking quitting. Yeah. You know?
So we'll get there.
Yeah.
I'm going to slow you down a little bit.
All right.
So tell me first what you do.
Yeah.
What's your specialty, and then we'll talk about a podcast a little bit too.
Yeah. So my specialty is freight brokerage, and I know for all the drivers out there who are watching this right now, they're probably like, "Oh, fuck this guy already," because I know the rap that brokers get, and you know, I've been in the industry my entire life. Like my great grandparents, when they immigrated from Germany, they started a trucking company in Iowa back in the 30s, and then my old man, he was an owner-op. He drove for 40 years. And I got into the industry. I always wanted to drive trucks ever since I was a little kid. I think every son who grows up with their dad as a truck driver wants to drive trucks growing up. But that was the one job that my dad told me he never wanted me to do. Yeah. Like, it was like the one thing, man, where he was always like, no. Like every time I wanted to do it, I'm like, Dad, teach me how to drive. He's like, no. Interesting. Why do you think? I think he didn't want that life for me. He wanted me to do something more with it. And, it could have also been the fact that he realized that, because like my dad, man, he suffered from addiction for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And he had a direct tie to driving and his addictions. And I think that was his way of not knowing that I wouldn't go down that same path of falling into drugs and driving and everything. 'Cause protecting you from that. Yeah, I see it because, I think I told you I drove, right? Yeah. So that loneliness behind the wheel is really tough. And I mentioned, like, if I ever can do anything to help truckers kill the time better, or with, like, truckers, again, I don't want to put generalize too much, but there's a lot of guys that struggle with mental health, and if you put them in the truck for a long time, I've had that, right? So that's why I feel compassionate about drivers spending so much time. But that's what I'm assuming is probably was one of the things that he wanted to protect you from, right? Like the long hours, exhaustion, right? So and that's the thing, man. It's like, because I only know truckers, like all my dad's buddies were truckers, all of them, but they all said the same thing too. They're like, you don't want this life. You don't want this life. They all, and I think that it's not the job or the work itself. It's what you're describing right there. It's that isolation that comes with the job, that, and then the mental health, the stuff that nobody wants to talk about, that, a lot of drivers, again, I'm not trying to generalize here, but I know that a lot of drivers suffer from, because it's like, even as a broker, like you get that where you're talking to drivers, sometimes they don't want to hang up the phone. But then again, you're also like that. Now that you're looking back, it's like, I might be the only person that driver's actually talking to in a day, or I might have been the first person that day that actually showed that driver an ounce of respect, and they're like, please don't stop talking. Yeah, or they're just at a point. That's one, but it's almost like the bartender's job, right? You're there, somebody's listening to you. You know how to listen. And then when you find that connection, I'm assuming, because I'm trying to think, I wouldn't even call my wife because I didn't want to not only, take up her time, but I just didn't want her to feel that I was sad behind the wheel. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, you can call, like, I didn't want to call my wife. You're not going to call your friends because then you're going to be pissed off because they're doing something somewhere, right? So then you talk to other truckers, and other truckers just keep repeating the same song over and over again. how hard it is, how shitty it is sometimes, and so I just listen to podcasts, but in audiobooks. But so tell me more. What happened? So you were like, okay, your dad was like, you're not going to do this.
Yeah. So I got in, like, when I went to school, I went to college, and I loaded trucks in college, and that's how I got in. Because, like, I wanted to be a part of the industry no matter what. Like, I had to be in it. And so I started loading trucks in college. You know, just like a lot of people who come from a working class family is, you know, I went to school full time and I worked full time at the, you know, but I was also a dumbass and took out student loans at the same time because, you know, 20-year-old Chris is like, oh, wait, they're going to give me money and I can drink beer? Like, of course. And, but, you know, so I did that. And then when I graduated college, I moved out west because I needed to get out of the bubble. You know, I grew up in small town USA, little farming town in northern Wisconsin, and my older brother lived out in Reno, Nevada, him and his wife. And so, like, I packed up my truck. I got hired at a freight brokerage over the phone, and I headed out west. And that's when I got my start in the industry. And I started out in carrier sales, and I was a broker for about 10 years. And then it was early 2020. And I just felt like I had accomplished everything I could as a broker. You know, like I knew I wanted more for myself. I didn't know what it looked like. And, you know, this is the beauty of going through the journey of self-discovery and everything else. So, like, I thought at the time, as I was like, all right, I want to go and work for a trucking company. I want to learn that side of the business. And my plan was to do that for 5 to 7 years and then make a C-suite play somewhere. I'm like, all right, I've been in it for 17 years at that point and do that. And then, so, like, I had a bunch of interviews lined up. I resigned from my job on a Monday. And by Thursday, COVID was COVID. And by Friday, like, literally in unison in my inbox, we'll talk to you in July, we'll talk to you in July, we'll talk to you in July. And that's when I was like, fuck, I had just moved to Arizona with my wife and my son. Beginning of a pandemic, I'm out of a job, and I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with my life here? You know? And but that's when I got on social media, like, and I was like, all right, my plan was I just got to be candidate number one everywhere. And I can't overemphasize the power of networking and getting to know people and knowing somebody everywhere, you know? And because it like, that's where I realized, because, like, I was isolated when I started because I worked for, like, the second largest freight broker in North America. And I was like, oh, everybody knows who I am. Couldn't have been further from the truth, man. Yeah. And when I got on social media, though, like, I was like, all right, I've got to be candidate number one everywhere. But, like, that's when I realized how much garbage was out there for content, like practical information in this industry from a content perspective. It was all too easy, you know. It was always just call this shipper. You get this freight, you find a truck and become a millionaire. And I'm like, either I was fucking terrible at my job for 10 years or I have a lot more people out there who realize that it's not that easy. And so I just started posting about my experience, man. And the one thing that I realized that was missing was, what do you do when things went wrong? Like, it's always easy to talk about when you're winning, you know, like, oh, when I had all these customers and I was making all this money. But what do you do when something goes wrong, or truck breaks down, or there's a load that gets damaged, or, you know, a shipper rips out the sidewall inside of a dry van because the forklift driver does it, and somehow it's the driver's fault now, but that's a different conversation to have. Yeah. But you know what I mean? And it's like, I was just like, well, wait a second, like, why is none of this information out there? Or why isn't anybody talking about that it's not fucking easy to make sales calls, you know? And so I just started talking about all the shit that I went through, man, like the mental struggles of getting told no 99 out of 100 times and how you handle a lot of those situations.
Yeah, but so tell me how from that, when you started doing that, how did you then started supporting yourself, and what happened with your career and what, like, that type of platform that you created for yourself?
So I was probably like 30 days into creating, like, putting out like a daily post, like that was my thing. And then because I had specialized in open deck and heavy haul for the last 4 years that I was brokering. And I'd put a post out there, and I had a pretty large broker reach out to me at the time, and they're like, hey, can you talk to one of our sales reps about this, because we want to offer this, but nobody in our company has ever done it before. And I'm like, all right, I'll talk to this guy, thinking like they're just going to offer me a job to do this. And fortunately, no job offer came after I talked to this guy, but that's when the light bulb in my head went off that, like, fuck, if these guys need help with sales and operations training, who else needs help with sales and operations training? And, like, I'm not a business coach or anything like that. I just work with freight brokerages and trucking companies because that's what I've done. You know, like, that's my niche, that's my wheelhouse. I know the industry. Like, I'll put my industry experience up there with just about anybody's, you know. And that's when I started doing content. Like, I started a podcast as well, because my whole thought process at the time was I'll have all my prospects come on as guests. We'll build up familiarity, and everything will be great. Couldn't have been further from the truth, man. Again, like nobody knew who I was, you know? So it was like I was putting out content all the time. And I mean, shit, man, I didn't make any money in business for the first 12 months. You know, I was living off of my savings account, and I delivered pizzas as well, you know, because again, I got a family to feed. The way that I see it at this point in my life, Sebastian, if you judge me by what I drive, what I wear, and what I do, I already don't like you, man. You fucking keep your opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's good. I like that story, man. So tell me, how did you? So you started creating your podcast and content. When did you start seeing something trickle in and start having traction in your own business?
Oh, fuck, man. It was probably 13, 14 months in, by the time I got to a point where I broke even for the first month. And then the real traction in where I was like, holy shit, I'm onto something, was probably 17, 18 months in.
And how long are you in right now?
I'm just over probably two and a half years in. Okay. At this point, getting close to about 2.5 years. April 27th of 2020 is when I filed my LLC. So I guess that was my official start date. So, you know, a little over 2 years in, and I just now feel like I'm starting to scratch the surface of my potential. And that was when I truly went all in, and I stopped, you know, because even early on, I was myself, but I wasn't like all the way in, you know, like I still kind of self-censored, you know, on certain topics and everything else.
You swore less?
Yeah, I swore less, exactly, is what it was. Like I always kept it, you know, quote unquote real, but not as like all in as what I went. But like as soon as I stopped, like I really took my own handcuffs off, that's when all the traction really started to gain, man. Because I realized like people don't, at least in my opinion, they just want somebody to bring reality. Like they don't want sugar-coated messages and canned responses. And ironically, that's when like my viewership switched from like sales rep to C-suite. Like, cause like I'm like the largest platform that I have a following on is LinkedIn, and they'll show the job title and the location and the company that they work for.
Interesting.
And that's when it all switched. Is like, you know, because like what I started to do is I do like a daily live show as well, where for 30 minutes I'll break down 3 industry headlines, and I'll actually provide insight into what it means, because there are some great journalists out there. Don't get me wrong. There's some great information that's out there, but headlines are geared to get you to click on them. You know, but like what's the substance behind it? But a lot of people will only read a headline and they'll formulate an opinion out of it. And for me, it was just about like, you know, the big thing was earlier this year was essentially death to the truck driver, you know, the bloodbath of the industry that was going to come, and all these people are going to go out of business and everything else. And I took offense to that, you know, like I truly did, because I'm like, my dad, like they're talking about my family, you know, and I'm like, I'm not going to say that there aren't real problems that come up in the industry, but don't fucking quit. And if you're going to, like, in the way that I see it, man, if you're really an entrepreneur, you know, if you call yourself an entrepreneur and a business professional, and you're going to advocate for somebody to go out of business, man, go fuck yourself. You know, like this is, in my opinion, man, like people come here to build their American dream, and I'm living my American dream, you know, and I feel like it was my duty to like actually provide insight out there and leverage the network of people that I've gained over these last couple of years, and have experts come on who, dude, like I'm not a trucking expert at the end of the day, man. Like there's people who know the asset game through and through. I have them come on and talk to it. People who know insurance, who know how to purchase a truck, a trailer, everything else, maintenance, all that stuff. I have those guys come on there and talk about that stuff. You know, like let's breathe some hope into this, because like there's going to be some challenges, but don't quit. You know, just because somebody who's sitting on some fucking iron or ivory tower who could give 2 shits less about the American truck driver is going to sit there and paint a narrative. Again, I'm not saying that the narrative isn't a real one, but not providing any substance behind it. And that was my big problem with a lot of the articles that do come out, is there's no substance. It's just talking about like, oh, hey, that house is on fire. All right, anyways, on to the next thing here. It's like, you're not going to do anything about it, but you're going to proclaim that you care about the American truck driver when it's convenient for you, but you're going to advocate for them to sell their operation.
It's interesting because you remember during COVID, the narrative in the media was the first time I've heard, and I've been doing this since 2008, where they started actually giving credits to truck drivers, and it's so important because of the supply chain is moving, and we stay home, and everybody's truck drivers are showing up to work, and that started that wave of hey, let's appreciate truck drivers, which is good, but what happens is everything has its ups and downs, right? And I feel like how do we talk about a freight recession? Because you can't ignore it. Shit like this, it's happening right now.
Yeah, of course.
So how do we? Because I have an opinion about what I would like to see in the industry, and the small mom and pops, few truck operators, which is 90% of trucking companies in the U.S. How do you give them a voice, right?
Yeah.
Which is what I would like to do is, and that's why your podcast is appealing to me as well, because you do talk to the industry, and that's what I think we need more of.
Yes.
And we've talked about it before on your podcast. It was like, okay, how do we bring more of the small, not the typical big carriers, fleet owners, right?
Yeah.
How do you bring on that guy that has 5 trucks, that has 10 trucks, that tells you how it is, right? And I own a shop. I had to just talk to a guy that has 10 trucks, and things slowed out for him. But his entire family works in the business, right? He drives it with his wife as a team. His kids are helping dispatch the trucks, man. It's like, and it's like, how do you address the downturn with and prevent? Because look, like in order to handle all the capacity during COVID, we had to expand, right? So that something has to give, right? Like the capacity that was created has to somehow now correct.
Yeah.
And that's what what they're talking about. People are going to go out of business, but would you agree with me that some people have to go out of business?
I think it's inevitable that people are going to go out of business, but it's not going to be because of what a lot of people. It's not because of the market shift. It's because they don't know how to operate their company. If you asked them, what is your break-even point, they don't know the answer to that.
They know the numbers.
And that's the thing is it's like, and I also challenge every freight broker out there as well. You should have that conversation with the carriers that you're working with. You should have a baseline understanding of what it costs to run a truck. I think it helps you sell better. I think it helps you procure capacity better, and I think it helps you gain more of a trust level with your customers as well, the shippers, the one who everybody wants to work with. I think that brings a ton of value to that, because it's not throwing darts against the wall.
I agree, but one of my biggest brokers has no idea about the cost, and they will never know. And not only they will never know, because I shouldn't say that, it's the willingness to go out and learn outside of your little zone, your little area, right? Because it does take, you have to, if you're going to go out and understand how a trucking company operates and what's your break-even point and what's your, it takes so much. Like you have to be involved, work for a trucking company or own a trucking company. Other than that, nobody else is going to go out of their comfort zone and try to learn. I agree with you. It would be great if they did, because that would be better service on both ends.
Yeah.
But what do you do in cases where, I mean, you tell me as an ex-broker, right? The rates drop so low, you gotta get a cut for yourself, and then you're giving a rate to a carrier. That's for him. It's a loss rate. He's at let's say $1.60, and he's losing money with every mile, right? Like, what do you do in a market like that when it is so shitty that you still have to cover for yourself, but then like you're giving him he's losing money?
It's, to me, I personally think that there is a lot of brokers, man, probably 90% of them, they don't even know how to broker. All right. They don't know how to accurately price freight. They race to the bottom on things. And a lot of the loads that a lot of these guys are posting, man, chances are they probably don't even have the tender. They don't even have the BOL. They're just trying to find a price. Yeah. So they're starting, because it's like, again, man, it's like if you look at a lot of these load postings, every single broker out there is posting the exact same lane, right? So it's a true spot market opportunity that's out there. A lot of the real customers that I've worked with in my career, they're not looking to save pennies every single day. They lose money when that freight doesn't move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think going out there and trying to leverage the capacity that's out there in the market is, again, man, some people are out there like they have such a short-term memory. Like everybody made money in the last 2 years. All right. Yeah. Not just carriers did. Yeah. Brokers made a lot of money. The shippers lost money in these last couple of years.
Oh, they're getting it back right now.
Yeah, exactly. They're making but that's how the market operates, though, man. But my job as a broker, in my opinion, is you have trucks, man. All right. So if I'm working with you, my job is to lower in a broker's market where what it is right now. Let's call it what it is. When the spot market is this way, my job, if I'm going to effectively work and survive in this industry as a broker, is I want to keep your rate as similar as possible the entire time. Mm-hmm. I want to lower my price to my shipper to stay competitive, and I know that I'm going to make my money in volume. If I'm moving a commoditized product like a dry van or a reefer or a legal flatbed, I make my money in volume. I don't make my money on 1 or 2 shipments.
Yeah.
And that's where people make the mistake, man, is they're trying to hold out and make $600 a load still, for example. And again, this is just all for conversation piece right now, where if I'm going to come in, I'm going to make that exact same amount on 3 shipments now as opposed to 1 shipment. And I know that if I own a market and if I pay you and every other trucking company that runs those lanes what they need, in time, I will have all the capacity in a freight market. No other broker will be able to compete with me, because as a broker, what's my product? What's my commodity? Trucks. And it's just a slow suffocation method that a lot of people don't want to apply because they want to get rich today, Sebastian. Mm-hmm. They don't think about tomorrow until tomorrow comes. They're very reactive in their approach. And frankly, it's like if you're going to sit out there, the way that I see it, man, and I know a lot of drivers watch your stuff. If a broker can't tell you basic level information, not every customer's first come, first serve. All right. Mm-hmm. Not every facility's first come, first serve. Not every, if they send you over a rate confirmation that doesn't even have an address on it, or it doesn't have the name of a facility on it, they probably don't even have the load.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those are the same guys and girls that are badgering you and your drivers every 5 seconds for a fucking update.
Yeah. Good point. But tell me then, what's out there for brokers? Are there resources for brokers to be a better broker? Because it's all practice, right?
Yeah. It's all going to come in repetition.
So what do you think, what is a good broker then? Like because again, thinking about, I have no idea about that side of the business other than working with brokers, right? But repetition and experience. But at the same time, is there anything that you would like to see better in the brokerage industry?
Yeah, man, I want to see people actually sell freight instead of posting it. Like, I think a good broker like this, man, if I'm going to talk to you, I want to know about your operation. All right, I want to know how many trucks you have in your fleet. Because again, if I actually have freight, I'm not concerned about just today. I need to make sure that load that comes across every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from my shipper, that you're going to have coverage for that.
Yeah.
I want to know how many trucks you have in your fleet. I want to know what days of the week you're available. I want to know what lanes you want to run. I want to know your why. Why do you want to run Chicago to Nashville? Do you have a drop yard in Nashville? Are you based in Chicago? Do you have a relay, a relay yard in Indianapolis? What's your operation look like? They're going to ask actual tangible questions. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be like, it picks here, it delivers here, this is what it weighs, this is what it pays. Because in my opinion, those guys probably don't even have the load. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But I want to know your why. Why do you want to run this lane for me? Because I'm not here to just cover today, man. I got 75 of these this month that I need to worry about covering. Yeah. And I want a trucking company that knows their operation. They have something there that makes them want to do these loads. And frankly, man, I want to know what you need to make you not look for other freight. Because that's why people fall off loads, man. Like everybody out there, turbos and blown tires only increase during a broker's market.
Yeah, of course.
Because you found fucking $300 more on another load. Yeah. I want you to make money. And that's what a real broker is, man. I want you to make money. I want my customer to make money. And I want to make a little bit of money, because I don't make money if trucks fall off, because then my customers get pissed at me. They take my freight away and they give it to the next broker. Mm-hmm. All right. I will gladly compress my margin percentage in a market like right now, knowing that in time, everybody else is just going to give up.
Yeah. So what makes a carrier, that dependable carrier, what could make some of the carriers that, ask themselves the question, like, hey, how do I create a long-term relationship with a broker? Like, give me some examples, like what they could do.
I know tracking is a big contention point, but for me, it's like a lot of just feeling it out. Like, I know that there's a bunch of animosity that's out there between carriers and brokers. And it goes back and forth. Like, again, with a lot of my content, man, I could probably 100x my engagement if I only talked about the negative side of the industry, because negativity is easier.
It draws people in.
But I don't want to talk about that. But what I think, again, it's like, to me, if you give me access to locations of your drivers, whether it be an e-log or a tracking, I don't have to call your driver. But you're going to feel me out too, man, because you're going to be like, hey, I'm on tracking. Why did you call my driver 7 times? I'm going to lay out in the beginning, man, like, all right, here you accepted my load for just conversation here, man. I'm going to tell you on the front end, before I even send you on the rate confirmation, man, this is how the communication needs to go. I need to know when your driver's empty. I need to talk to your driver. I need to verify this information. I need to ensure that, hey, the driver does in fact have a 53-foot step deck with ramps and not a 53-foot step deck without ramps, or he's got a 53-foot flatbed, or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And then we're going to break it down like, hey, when I'm talking to your driver, listen, can you text me when you arrive at the shipper? I need a picture of the product when it's loaded up. I need to know that that's out there for your protection and for my protection. All right, I need to ensure, because how many times do we go out there and, oh, that wasn't like that when the truck left. Well, actually it was. Here's your proof. Yeah. And it's also, if this is a multi-day transit, listen, I needed a check call in those days in between pickup and delivery, because as an early mentor in this industry told me, we deal with man, machine, and technology, and they all break down. I just want to make sure you're doing all right. That's it. I want to make sure that, do you need anything from me? Because again, I'm behind a computer.
Yeah.
If you've never delivered to Nashville before, let me know, man. I can find you a truck stop that's close by or something like that. Let me do that work for you. And I feel like I'm going to let you know that stuff on the front end. And again, as a carrier, if you ask a lot of these brokers and they can't provide that information to you, I wouldn't want to work with them.
Yeah.
Because you guys are the ones who are out there doing the work. Like the real work, like again, man, I was raised in a blue collar. I know what real work is, man. Like I fucking sit in an air conditioned office and stuff like that. What can I do to make your life easier?
So is this what you consult with other companies on? Is that what you tell them a lot?
That's it, man.
Do you see a lot of that in the industry with people you work, that they miss that aspect?
A lot of people miss it because man, it's like what we were talking about on my podcast, man. It's just that basic fundamental information that's not there. It's only the 5,000 fleet trucks that are out there talking about the market and this and that and everything else under the sun. That doesn't necessarily apply to a mom and pop 5-truck operation.
Yeah.
And it's like finding that direct access to shippers is huge. And it's also like, just because a load pays $6 a mile in one direction doesn't mean you're going to get anything coming back, Yeah. And it's like, to me, it's like, do you like setting up that region? Because that was the thing, man. Like my old man did, like, again, because he drove Minneapolis to New York City for 40 years, every week. That's all he did. And then he'd grab partials on the way back, or he'd grab something that paid great to come into Chicago. He'd drop in Chicago, might deadhead back up to Minneapolis because it just wasn't worth his time. But he made, like he knew what his costs were. He knew his lanes that he would run and he would come back on. But my dad also was like, I got 6 empty feet. He's like, I'll drive down there and I'll throw, dude, one thing that he used to move a ton of was airline freight. Like literal, like for whomever, he'd pick up in Philadelphia and he'd drop down here in Chicago and stuff like that. Yeah. Like airline seats was something that he would bring back because it was just a couple, but those guys would pay money. He would pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah. So tell me about your ideal customer, people that you work with as far as consulting. Like who's your audience? Who's your customer?
It's pretty much growth phase freight brokerages and trucking companies that are out there, man. A lot of it's a lot of sales-based thing, because again, it's like, how do I sell? How do I find a shipper? And, and then another thing too, man, is a lot of my clients, they always like, oh, I want to sell more. Okay, well, what's your operations look like? How many carriers do you guys work with? How many carriers do you guys reload? What's your one-time carrier utilization percentage? Yeah. Most of them are 85, 90%, man. It's because they turn and burn. You can't grow a sales team if your operations can't cover the freight that you're currently moving? You know, so for me, it's like, let's start with operations. Let's solidify operations. Let's get that up and running. Then let's add more freight onto it. Because if you can't cover 1,000 loads in a month, you're sure as shit aren't going to be able to cover 2,000 loads in a month.
Yeah, yeah. What's your plan for the freight coach? How do you envision that for the next few years? What are you going to do with that?
Largest independent blue collar media company on earth, man.
Nice.
Making that blue collar sexy again.
Yeah.
I want, like, in my opinion, man, we got to bring an emphasis back to the working class, the hardworking men and women of this country that are the real backbone of this economy, not the fucking suits that are out there making policies that fuck us over and benefit themselves.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, man, there's so many good people that are out there in this world.
Yeah.
You know, that want that voice. You know, and that was the thing, man. Is it's like, my dad never came on any of my content, and this is like one of my big regrets, and it pains me this day because, you know, he passed away back in December, and he came on because, and like where a lot of my mentality switched, man, is because he essentially, to the day he died, he was like, nobody gives a shit about truck drivers, Chris. That's why I'm not going to come on there and talk about anything, because nothing will change. Like, I'm on a fucking mission to make that a reality now, to bring respect back into this job. And I know that, you know, again, there's a lot of situations that happen that are perpetuated by behaviors, you know, and it's like, to me, it's like, man, start with you. If you want to be a change, if you want to be a difference, start with you.
Yeah.
For me to influence the industry or to do anything like that, man, I gotta be at my best. I gotta talk about best practices, not how do I fuck somebody over to make an extra $5.
Yeah, I like that. Tell me more, because are you going somewhere with this? Like, I hear that passion of making blue collar sexy again, and it's
well, because, dude, I'm from the working class, man.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I grew up, man. My first real job was washing the rims on my dad's truck. Like, 5 years old, getting out there. Like, then this was, man, I actually said this at his funeral. I'll never forget this, man. I was a little kid. I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. He came home from driving. He's like, go wash the rims. And I'm like, I looked outside. I'm like, but Dad, it's raining. And he looked me in the eye and said, Chris, I didn't ask for a weather report.
Yeah.
You know, that was the thing, is that, like, that was that work ethic that was instilled in me from a very young age. That doesn't matter. You got to show up. You got to work. And, you know, like, again, man, like my first paid job was picking up trash, you know, and stuff like that. And it was always, what I was always taught was, it doesn't matter what you do, just be fucking undeniably the best at it. And that's the mission that I'm on right now, is I want people, when people listen to my shit and my content and everything else and the information that I put out there and the companies that I'm building up, I want them to know, like, he's the fucking best at it. Like, there's no question.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like bringing respect back to the people that put food on our table. Like, man, that they're just like, there's no magic button that the shelves just miraculously get full at grocery stores and everything else. And man, it starts out with the farmers too. The man who are those guys who are busting their ass planting fields. It's, you know, the train workers, the rail workers that are out there fucking making sure that stuff gets put in, the port workers, all that shit, man. Like, dude, like, that's that's where the focus needs to be.
Yeah.
It's not about, you know, again, I'm not discrediting fucking what people do to make a buck, but, you know, man, in my opinion, man, the celebrities, they don't give a fuck about any of us.
Yeah.
You know, like, I was just talking to my Uber driver on the way down here. You know, man, we were talking about that, all that stuff, man. It's like, we got to work together more. And again, like, I know the kumbaya scenario doesn't necessarily exist, that's out there, but I feel like, man, if you respect what somebody else does more for you, like, that's not just a server, you know, like, that person's bringing you a meal, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. It's the recognition of the people that show up every day, right?
Yeah.
And truckers showed up, and I feel like, because it exists in almost every industry. You have the service, the restaurant business, you have the truckers, you have the hairdressers or hairstylists. I mean, it's almost every segment you're going to look at people that are grinding, and, you know, it's like showing their story and maybe exposing the path that they're on and saying, hey, you could be happy doing this, right? You could be happy being a truck driver. Because, again, when I talk about mental, like, a lot of that stuff is hard, but could you be successful being, is there a path for you to be successful in trucking? And I believe there is, because
100%.
That's exactly what my experience is, right?
Yeah.
You start from a truck and you keep going and build a small business for yourself and build a very comfortable, good life for yourself. But what what needs to happen is that needs to be exposed somehow, right?
Yeah.
That needs to be talked about. Like, hey, don't just settle on being a driver. If you're, especially when I talk to, drivers, hey, maybe consider buying a truck one day. And a lot of drivers, in my opinion, the guys that went through my company are in my company. They do talk about owning a truck, but they're afraid to pull the trigger. Because I'm like, I'm here to help. I'll help you figure this out, right?
I was gonna say, sometimes the best plan is zero options, man. You don't have a fucking choice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where I was with my company at the beginning of the pandemic. Nobody was hiring.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I had no option. And that's why I think like it's working though, is because I don't have a fucking plan B.
Yeah.
Like I'm all in on this stuff, Sebastian. Like there's no turning back. Like I'll never have a W-2 from anybody ever again.
I don't think you're going to get a job with swearing so much.
Yeah, no, dude, that's exactly. Unless they start paying me to say fuck, man, then I'll become a billionaire overnight.
Suicide prevention. Hello, this is Chris.
Yes. That's funny.
But tell me where people can find you. Talk to me about your social media account, website. What do you got going on?
No, exactly, man. You can. My podcast is Coffee with the Freight Coach. It's available on iTunes and Spotify. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. My weekday live show where I break down industry headlines and actually provide insight into what a lot of this information is most importantly what you can apply and utilize and see a difference in your business. That's uploaded onto the Coffee with the Freight Coach podcast audio only version. It live streams on YouTube, which is just the Freight Coach. And again, you can find me if you type in the Freight Coach on any social media handle, you'll see me on there. That was one thing. And again, if you're going to start doing social media, own that tag on every social media platform right away. Go in there and just get it all done. That's the thing. It's a brand recognition, man. You'll also see me with the blaze orange polo and a backwards hat everywhere because, again, how do I stand out in a crowd? This is it.
Yep. Good. I got my United by Diesel hat too.
Love it.
Nothing else. So appreciate you, brother, for coming out, man.
I'm
looking forward to next time, and thank you. Let's go get some drinks.
Let's do it.
Let's see you.
All right.